Listo. Thank you for coming along this interview, Alberto, and I want to appreciate your time based on your experience on studying and executing architecture as your profession.
It's a pleasure, Ignacio.
Thank you. So I wanted to start off, what are your thoughts based on the relationship between culture and architecture here in San Luis Potosí?
Well, here in San Luis Potosí, we've traveled a long way within our architecture development. We have a long history coming from the Spanish culture and implemented to the materials we can find on site. For example, here in San Luis Potosí, we use a lot of material called cantera rosa, which is basically what all of our downtown is made of. And well, the cathedral, which is one of the main buildings here in San Luis Potosí, well, culture buildings, is made of this material. Also, we have a plaza, which is called Plaza de Armas, which separates the government and the church, how the Spanish plazas were used to made. And so that's the way in which I would say it connects. We have a history connected between what has been happening on site, connected to the materials we could find on site. And that's the main basis, I would say, how it connects.
Of course, very valid answers. I appreciate it. And also, what would you say, Alberto, are the main monuments here in San Luis Potosí, besides Plaza de las Armas,
Yeah.
represent that connection with culture and our past with Spain? So, for example, in my personal opinion, it's El Teatro. So I don't know if you have any different or if you have any feedback. I'd
I was
appreciate.
about to say El Teatro de la Paz. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know if you know the history of El Teatro de la Paz. It was a building made by, well, sent by Porfirio Diaz, which was a president here in Mexico
right.
that, well, governed for, I think it was more than 30 years. He was kind of like a dictator, some people like to
Yeah.
say. But he had this French loved this love for the French culture, and he tried to implement it into the Mexican main buildings. Here in San Luis, when he gives the order to construct this plaza with this Teatro de la Paz, he sends the la cúpula, which is the hood of that building, made it directly in France. But another example I'd say would be our lovely Caja del Agua, which is
Oh,
not
yeah.
a monument, but it's more like I like to define it like a staple for San Luis Potosí,
Mhm.
because it's an icon, but it's not a monument. It was used as a sile, a water sile, and that was its main idea of why was it constructed. Another one here in San Luis Potosí, well, most of them you can find them on downtown. Well, we have the cathedral, as I also already told you, which is it's a neoclassical cathedral,
Mhm.
which the Spanish wanted to do to after the illustration of the French, they in Europe they tried to destroy it. Well, not destroy, but start from scratch. They said, well, everything we've learned, it's okay, but we want to start this new basis uh, based on the revolutions that are happening on Europe. And so with this, the illustration brings us the neoclassical period, the neo-Gothic period, and here in Mexico we use a lot the neoclassical period. But that would be my answer. La Caja del Agua, El Teatro de la Paz, and the Cathedral are the three main buildings historically talking.
Definitely agree with you, Alberto, and I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And as a last question, I wanted to wonder, as your point as an architect, what would you say would be the proper measures or recommendations to, preserve and, kind of promote San Luis's culture within architecture? What would you recommend, let's say, to like a public figure or to the, local people of San Luis Potosí? to help preserve and encourage more engagement in these, classical cultural monuments?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you have to connect your people, your local people, to the things you have. I would say, like, for example, if we have a wonderful cathedral, well,
Mhm.
let's make the people engage with it. And so you can make it with events. You can make it, for example, here in San Luis, we have an event in which they light the facade and they make this show of lightning, of lights within the facade of the cathedral. And I think it's a really cool way of how you can engage your people into one of these buildings. Another way would be to talk to your people about what does it represent and how does it connect to the history in San Luis Potosí. And that's a way in which I would say people, well, if you engage them with the buildings and you make them love them, they're going to take care of them. And
Of
that's a
course.
way I would say you can preserve. But
Mhm.
if you're talking not only to the locals, you're talking, well, national wide or even international wide, well, we have to, for example, you can't, well, you can, but the easiest way is there's these web pages like Our Daily and pages focused directly into
Right.
architecture. And when we show our main buildings, our main cultural monuments to the world and try to connect them with, for example, what I was talking to you about the neoclassical. If you know
Right.
how to connect the new neoclassical with the old classical and try
Mhm.
to maintain that engagement, well, the people that have these classical monuments can connect with the neoclassical. And that's another way. I think it has worked in uh, different times and in different projects. But here in Mexico, the way in which we try to preserve mainly is by, well, first making, well, trying to sell them to the people, even though they've been in place for
Right.
hundreds, well, not hundreds, but at least decades.
Yeah.
And some of them, well, yeah, hundreds. And,
Mhm.
and the other way, well, as I told you, is to make people engage with the building by making them love them and making events and making them part of their daily life. That's
Right.
the main way, I would say.
Of course. Sounds good. So that's all for me, Alberto. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience and expertise. And I appreciate your time and the dedicated answer to each question.
A pleasure, Ignacio. And anything that you would like to ask later within the course, I'm here to solve
Thank
your
you.
questions.
I appreciate it, Alberto.
It's a pleasure for me, Ignacio.
Thank you.